Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for February 3rd, 2020. We begin the special order calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 1, 8599BZ, 1106 Metcalf Avenue, the Bronx. Indeed. Okay.
So, following the last hearing on November 19th, we sent a letter to the owner requiring that he or she attend tomorrow's hearing and to inform him or herself about the board's ongoing concerns by watching the hearing videos. So that still stands, requirement for the owner to attend. The most recent submission, though, I thought was surprisingly responsive, given how long we've been at this, to our last comments, during which the last comments we expressed disappointment by chronic lack of progress. I think now we see the planting in place, but it's not totally clear. The vacuum and air pump and icebox removed. I just wish there were more photos so we could verify that all of our issues were resolved. On November 20th, our compliance officer went out for a site visit and took over 30 photographs showing details for the commissioners who didn't see that. That's on the site visit site, but I would like it moved into the folder so the applicant can see the photographs. Among the most egregious observations in those photos on November 20th are the piles of trash, which seem to be bags of bottles for recycling that overflow a fenced-in area. It's not clear where it is, but I think it's actually at the front of the building. Commissioner Sheta commented on this situation in November as well. We had also asked that fencing be replaced to be all wrought ironed at the front because it's a mix of different kinds of fencing, and I don't think it was done based on the photos from November 20th, and even you can see a little bit of an edge of the photo of the fence in the ones provided by the applicant just now, so I think it wasn't done. Photos by the owner also show the chain link with slats in some places in really bad shape, cracked asphalt in need of resurfacing, and so on, but at least the street trees were installed, so that's great. I think now we're making progress, but we really need the owner to provide us with photos of everything and go down the list of all of our comments and say, this is a photo that shows repair or change of this thing, right? So they were off to a really good start, I thought. It's the first time. So anybody else on this one?
Just I want to add the drums issue. They clarified about it, saying that the drums contained water from the sump pumps. Usually drums are not used to contain water from sump pump. If you have a sump pump and you get water out of this sump pump, it usually goes to the sewer system or to a treatment tank, but it doesn't need to be placed in drums. Drums means you have something contaminated, and drums need to be removed from the site. They cannot stay on site.
Yeah, never heard of storing the water from a sump pump. That makes no sense, really.
I don't know, I get the feeling like they got a recent leak issue and they put some pump in recently again, and they don't know where to drain the water coming from the sump pump, so they came up with this invention, 2-3 drums, get the water out, put it in the drums, and then take it somewhere else. This is not how it's done. Drums, when somebody sees drums on a site, whether it's active or inactive, you usually start like digging for the black card on the drums, looking for contaminants. It's a scary scene actually. If I'm gonna stop by that site and buy something, grab a snack, and I see this drums, I'm not gonna do it. So that they need them to contain water from some pumps is if you have a water issue, either take it to a treatment tank. There are like 1 cubic yard tanks, which could contain like 5 drums. And it looks nice, it looks nothing like contamination, you can buy one and put it on site and use it, but not drums.
Okay, thanks.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Item number 234312BZ, 570 East 21st Street, Brooklyn. There's a request for an adjournment.
Right, they requested an adjournment to have more time to respond to the board's questions, specifically about the status of being certified as a school. And we understand that there are many members of the public who submitted letters expressing interest in this case. They also came to the last hearing and submitted recent letters in opposition both to the case and to the adjournment. But because we received so many letters, it seems that the public who might attend this hearing are aware of the adjournment, and it's typical that this is only the first adjournment request, so it's typical that we allow it. So we don't think it's an unreasonable request to have an adjournment. Okay.
New case is item number 3, 20768BZ, 11558 Dunkirk Street, Queens.
Okay. Sorry. We have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. We have letter of no objection from the fire department. Community board recommends approval with 2 opposed. There are 2 letters from brokers that state that at this location there is no market for residential use and seem to indicate that the space has been vacant for 4 to 5 years. I'm not sure if that's a case. It's just the way it's written. It seems like, it says we've been representing you since 2014 or something, and so that sounds like they've been constantly searching for a tenant. I don't know. The photos show the fence in poor condition and the parking area generally unkempt. Satellite imagery shows cars parked on the sidewalk and the side area used for open storage, which is not permitted. That area is adjacent to a private residence and needs to be better shielded from this activity. The 1989 VSA resolution expressed concerns about the use of the side yard for storage and conditioned the grant on that area not being used for that purpose. Adjacent property owners need to be notified of the next hearing. The 2004 grant directs this board to require a financial study to establish that the site cannot now be used for a conforming use. This was not mentioned in the statement of facts. Drawings for a 20,000 square foot 2-story residential and community facility building were provided, however, with no mention in the statement of facts of their purpose. A report on the distressed state of St. Albans residential property is also included, presumably in lieu of the financial study, but that's also not explained in the statement of facts. I do have to say, though, that I find the request by the prior board a bit strange, given that this site is up against the Long Island Railroad tracks, and that with the exception of the one house that's adjacent to it, all of the sites on this side of Dunkirk, as opposed to the other side, are either industrial or mixed uses, like a 2-story building with retail on the ground floor and an apartment above. So, yeah, I know this is a market question, but if the St. Albans market is depressed, it seems like these houses would be the last to sell unless it's deeply affordable housing, which of course there's a need for. The proposed plans tell a different story from what is described as a desire to convert the rear to storage. There is a new curb cut shown on the site plan to be installed on the north end of the site, yet in the floor plan there is no access to the building via a driveway on that side. Photos of the building front show one set of roll-up doors suitable for truck docking with broken curbs for access, and another set at the north that has been bricked up, and there's no curb cut shown on the site plan accessing those roll-up doors. At the rear of the site on the floor plan, there are 2 rooms labeled auto painting oven and oven, hoping that we're talking about some other kind of painting. I'd like them to explain what this is, but the site is absolutely not approved for automotive use, and especially for spray painting. Satellite imagery also shows the rear portion of the site that is, according to the plan, unenclosed, enclosed. DOB's complaint log verifies these suspicions, indicating illegal automotive repair and construction in the rear portion dating back to 2012, although the inspectors didn't issue violations, perhaps because they couldn't gain entry. So in short, I'd like to understand what's the real story, that the drawings need to be corrected to reflect whatever the story is and eliminate any ask for automotive use. Other comments?
Some of my comments are similar. I've asked for interior photos of the interior fence condition along the residential lot line, especially along the rear lot line. It's not clear what is that area being used for and the condition of it. I would also recommend that the applicant request to the Parks Department for street tree planting along the frontage, because I think at least 1 or 2 can be planted along the street line. As you mentioned, the gate to the parking area needs to be improved. It is hanging from the hinge. I think it's too big. The size of it looks too, so structurally it may be not in good condition. And it wasn't clear because the photos that we got, the parking lot is empty. There aren't any striping marked on it indicating that these are the areas vehicles are to park, employee vehicles are to park as per the statement of fact. So I would like to know what is that existing side lot area being used for? Is it really being used by employee parking? And based on that, if it is, then I would like to, recommend that they provide some kind of a buffer, like a fender kind of thing, so that the vehicles do not hit the fence. That was my recommendation. Did I have any other comments? No, that's it.
I actually was kind of confused because, well, to me, the site looked like an eyesore. But I was looking for proof of continuous use since the variance did expire in 2013, and they don't address that, and it's got to be continuous use authorized by the variance. It can't be that they show us that there's automotive use and that's working. Now I understand why they put those Realtor letters in, I guess, because I didn't know the background that they were actually asking that these people do a financial, but the Realtor letters are not a financial. However, I do agree, like you, it would be fairly easy for them to prove that the residential is not going to work there. And I'm wondering if whether the previous board thought that there was going to be a general conversion in that neighborhood and more things were going to become residential, but it would be helpful for us if they actually gave us a background to what went on in 2004 so that we could know going forward.
I wonder if there was a rezoning that was being considered for that area. There was a talk of St. Albans rezoning, so I don't know if that was within, if there was a talk of St. Albans rezoning. I don't know if that particular block was within the rezoning area or not. So it would be helpful if the applicant can provide a little bit of the background.
I just want to say that this is one of the projects that when I really looked at the decision from the previous board, I was happy with the decision. The ask for financials to prove that the current use or the previously granted use is no longer needed, or that as of right residential is still not rewarding. That was like a very wise decision. I want to give him a credit for that. By the way, the fact that they were required to submit a financial this time, it's in the statement of fact. I did read in the statement of facts, one of the conditions called for a financials.
Yeah.
But I saw that the applicant did cut the corner. They didn't submit any financials, and instead they just submitted the 2 Realtor letters, believing that they're going to be convincing to us. I don't think. I believe they know what they are doing. Even they submitted as-of-right drawings for residential, and I believe the allowable number of dwelling units is over 20 units.
Yeah.
But the number of units submitted, I would love that the developer, like in this country, build these kind of units. It's about 7,500 square foot in footprint per unit, per just one apartment. So this is a very crude solution actually to check the feasibility of the residential use. The other thing that I believe they intentionally, I don't think they were in compliance with the previous grant. The reason I'm saying that, because when you look at the Google image, they are dated 2018, you see a mess, a total mess on the site. Storage, cars parked on the sidewalk, like the chair said. But the photos they submitted to us were backdated to 2017. So I'm not sure if whoever prepared the statement of facts and the compliance chart, and he just put this condition and said compliance, yes. Are you serious? You're sure that this site was in compliance with the previous grant conditions? I don't think so. So I believe they need to submit to us a financial analysis with a residential use that's designed carefully, and they owe us the burden to prove that this switching to residential for now is not gonna be rewarding for them. By the way, the letter from the real estate agents says this, it has this kind of language. We tried to market the residential, we weren't successful.
Right.
We tried to market the commercial, and it's beautiful. This is not the way it works here. We do not judge the feasibility of the residential or based on the commercial being more rewarding. We need a financial containing construction cost, and we need to get like a full feasibility study proving that the residential use is not going to be feasible to adapt.
But the other part that's strange about the Realtor letters is it didn't say, we tried to market the site for sale as residential. It wasn't specific because you can't use the building for residential, right? And then we tried to market the site for commercial, which is already built out, and we were so successful that you have tenants. In other words, we brought in 5 tenants or whatever it is, and we've consistently done that over the last whatever, because it says there's a real need for warehouses. But then we're not actually seeing the site used as a warehouse. If we look deeply into it, it's being used for automotive, a little upholstery shop. I saw tire repair on one of the, one of those mapping, one of those things where Google gives you shops that are in the neighborhood. It said tire repair. So obviously storage is not the main use, even though now they're asking for it. So maybe there's a new tenant that's interested in storage. I don't understand.
And even if it is, this site is very adjacent to a large residential community, and we need to reconsider this, even if the previous board didn't ask actually for the financials. I would want to see whether this use could be stopped and switch it to another community friendly use.
I think we have to step back and we have to look at what this case is before us and what we are asking. I think as you said, Chair, this site, this entire block, except for one block.
On this side of the block.
On this side of the block, it contains the entire rear yard consists of the LIRR train line. And all the uses on this particular block, it's all manufacturing warehouse, and it's been there for a very long period of time, even before the 1961 rezoning, except for one house. So, and it's towards the downhill of it's like a hill, and this is kind of towards the lower part of the hill. So while I respect the fact that, yes, the current zoning is R3, and therefore we should do everything possible to allow for it, I think we have seen in so many variance cases that it's not like forcing something into it. In this case, the uses around it, it's not going to be conducive or attractive to residential use. Right, and you have very active manufacturing uses all along that block front. So And I would say even this lot, if you were to rebuild it as residential, there's going to be quite a bit of site cleaning that would have to happen.
Right, well, we don't know that, but
While I agree with what the vice chair is saying, I still think that they have a requirement to show continuous use.
yes.
And there seems to be a conflict between the broker's letter and what we see from Google Images on what's going on here. I'd like that to be cleared up. I'd like to actually have an honest history of what's happening at this site. And so we can see if they're entitled to a continued use.
And I do want to say that it's not typical, the unpacking of a variance is not typically what we do, right? This is a request to extend the term, right? We don't typically unpack whether or not it's still necessary unless they can't show continuous use, in which case they've abandoned the use, right? And then you have to start all over again and prove to us you need a variance, right? But the reason that it's coming up in this case is because the board obviously struggled with this question before and then asked us to look at financials. So it's a very unusual situation. I think we've had in our tenure a couple of cases where we give the next board an instruction, you know, this is the last time, so don't make it bigger or whatever. So that's what the prior board did. Okay. Any other comment? Okay.
And that's why actually I'm asking for what I asked for.
Yeah.
Because we got burdened with the request from the previous board to look at the financials. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Let's take a look at the financials and see whether residential use cannot be used here or not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Move on?
Yeah, one second.
Okay, let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Okay.
Item number 4, 12013 BZ, 1815 Forest Avenue, Staten Island.
All right, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. I'm very appreciative that there's a compliance report that actually lists in detail the areas of non-compliance with the terms of the grant. It was kind of delightful to read that. The photo PDF submitted on November 19th was corrupted in the file that I looked at, so it can't be opened. So if the applicant could please resubmit that. Adjacent property owners should be notified of the next hearing. It doesn't look like any of the landscaping required on the drawings is in place. Much of this was intended to shield the many residential neighbors adjacent, especially from the trash containers, which I never understand are being located right against residential property lines. I'd like to recommend that moving forward with any of these projects that we require the trash containers to be within the building. Because why do they move it off away into somebody else's problem? It should be their own, right there in front of them. Maybe they'll keep it cleaner because it's part of their own building. They need to provide acoustical data showing the menu board sound transmission relative to the residential properties. They should probably be adding acoustical fencing, which may not have been something the board was aware of back then or wasn't available back then. Lumen spread diagram actually shows a spill onto residential properties, so they need to provide shields. The landscaping plan must show the type of vegetation, height, spacing, and number, and where planting is not already in place, it must be dense buffering to grow higher than the fence. Questioning whether the maneuverability diagram is correct. It shows cars entering through the exit at Morningstar and then driving through the parking lot to queue at the drive-through. So like maybe the arrows are in the wrong direction, I don't really understand. So what's to stop a car from just driving in straight and cutting on the line is the first question. They need to show the 10 reservoir spaces on the drawing. Apparently they have more, but they need 10. And describe the operations with respect to trash pickup and hours for the drive-through, because that was something that was a condition in the prior approval, right? Yeah. Any others?
Similar comments, based on the photos provided, it seems there is more in-ground planting provision has been made, especially along the commercial storefront of, along Forest Avenue. However, they have not been populated with landscaping. So if you have gone through that effort of providing the landscape possibility, please include landscaping and add that and revise the landscaping plan accordingly. I agree with you with the lumen count. Regarding the trash enclosure, the plan states proposed trash enclosure would have a 6-foot high fence. From the photos provided and from the Google Street View, it seems they are in place, but they need to provide it in the revised plan.
Sorry,
It's
say that one more time. The approved plans show a 6-foot high enclosure
Yeah. And it seems from the Google Street View it is in place, but it says proposed. So what I was confused
Oh.
by, are they proposing a new 6-foot high fence or is it the existing one? So the terminology of proposed was being used, so I wasn't sure. Were they planning to put a new one? And if so, what is the material that is being proposed that is different from what is being shown? The signage is not in compliance with the approved plan. And though additional signage has been proposed, it is in compliance with the underlying C11 regulation, including the illuminated sign, so I'm okay with that. And that should be revised in the proposed plan to reflect the existing condition.
Sorry, I thought that
So-
they did explain that they were adding this many signs because the non-compliance list says this sign is bigger, this one is, the M is illuminated, like things like that, right?
But if you look at the total requirement of the underlying C11, they're well within that.
No, you
So-
said revise the drawing, I'm confused, what are they supposed to revise? I
They
thought
should-
the drawing is showing what they're proposing.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Also,
Okay.
and that they're still under the max for illumination.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll
on
go back
each
and check the
frontage.
drawings. I
Because
thought
there's
the
a
drawing was
chart.
not.
Okay.
Okay, I will check again. I thought it was not. That's what.
I actually went to the site, and the landscaping is definitely sparse and dying. And part of it is because it's winter, the other part is it was just planted sparsely. So they definitely should plant according to their landscaping plan. And I say that simply because if you look at the new landscaping plan that proposes a strip of landscaping at the front of the building, if you go to the site, there's only half a planting bed there. The other half is concreted over.
Okay.
So they really need to dig that up so that it'll match the plans. I agree with you about the menu board. They should show the sound emanating from it, but they should also show on plan the distance from the menu board to the residences, which I don't see. And I'm curious about the placement of the garbage shed, so to speak, because I think that the goals of McDonald's operators are definitely different from the goals of the board, because I think they're looking at it from an access point, and it's very easy for a truck to come in off of Morningstar and go along the back and go right over to the garbage, and they don't really care or aren't considering the effect of it on the residences. They're just considering access. How could you get a truck in and a truck out as easily as possible?
Yes.
So they probably have to realign their goals to be more in line with
Yeah.
what the board is looking for, so I agree with you about looking for locations that are not along residential lot lines and trying to make it work. So those are my
Great,
comments.
okay, thanks.
We do have a letter of objection from the fire department. It came in this morning.
Oh,
This is one thing. The other thing is regarding the lighting diagram. We want to know whether it's based on measurements or just analytical numbers. Also, when they provide the lighting, we need to get the readings, like what is filtering through the fence, and same thing for the menu board noise measures. We need to get them at the top of the fence.
right. Commissioner Chabot?
I think I think you've all covered most of my comments. The only other point of concern was that the lighting's actually on the lot line. All the lighting's on the lot line, so I'm not sure how that's gonna work with decreasing the lumen spread, with all those lights on the lot line.
It's called
Shields.
shields in a major way,
Right.
right? That actually break the transmission of the light as it spreads like this. There's got to be a shield that blocks it and reflects it the other way. It's doable. It may be very long shield. I don't know. You
It's
don't know
more,
what it is, huh?
it's gonna need to be more, the more the light is close to the property line, the more shielding effort
Yeah.
that the property owner needs. Regarding the light and the noise spread, I just wanna make it like, from now on forward, if we have the menu board existing and the light poles existing, I believe it should be like much better to get the actual measurements rather than analytical
Yes,
readings. If the facility is brand new and they still gonna go and install the light and install the menu board, yes, it makes sense to get something based on analytical model, but if
That
we
makes
have
sense.
something existing, it's much better to go and just measure it.
correct. That makes sense, yes. Okay.
New case, appeals calendar, new cases, item number 5, 2018-201A, 46 Kissel Avenue, Staten Island. There is a revision to this application that came in late, well, late revision to the application, I'm sorry, that the applicant added a garage to this, to the
Right.
plan now, just so, I don't.
We have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. The statement of facts does not accurately describe the zoning lot. The zoning lot has greater frontage on Kissel than 21 feet, and the house in the front relies on the 21-foot width for its own driveway. So the zoning lot's wider, I think it's 50, or close to 50 feet, or over 50
Basically, the
feet.
zoning lot includes two tax lots, the existing building and the proposed one.
Yes, and-
It wasn't clear from the statement of.
Correct. The statement describe, when I'm reading it, I'm so confused because it says it's a 21 by 300 foot deep or something, and then I'm looking at the drawing. No, it's not, so. The drawings do not depict the entirety of the zoning lot either. The curb cut access to the other house and the parking spaces for the other house as they exist today. The statement of fact states there are 6 parking spaces on the zoning lot, and when I looked at the revised drawing, which now adds a garage, I only find 4 or maybe 5. It depends on how many you count in the garage. So I don't know if either the statement of facts is not up to date with the drawing, or I'm not finding all the parking lots. So there's 2 at the garage and 2 behind the, 2 at the garage, 1 in front in tandem, and 2 behind the house, so that's only 5. So, it's not clear to me where the tax lot delineations are on the drawings. And the drawings are done by hand, it's so nice to see a hand drawing, but I don't understand the significance of the bold red line around a portion of the perimeter. It just sort of dies off for no apparent reason, and it's not labeled as having a particular meaning. We also need a builder's pavement plan. This is a house behind a house
just gonna say.
situation, which presents the unfortunate result of no safe walkable area to the rear house, since the entirety of the 20-foot wide drive is a driveway. It also provides no clearance at all in case of a car parked in the driveway by the adjacent property owner. We've talked about this before. What if the TV repair guy comes and pulls in, then you can't get out of the, you can't get out. Or the fire department can't get in, which is really the main issue. It also appears, this project also appears to be the result, unless I really can't understand what the history of the site is, of a 2018 tax lot reapportionment that may have removed access to the subject property directly from Amelia Court, which is a CCO street. I tried to do a little bit of research on the history of the subdivision approval, but it's like all over the place, so I really can't figure out when these lots were created. Not with the materials that I have. It is also land located in the center of a multifamily development that may have been developed as one zoning lot and may have relied on open space that includes all or a portion of the proposed new zoning lot. So I need to understand better how these lots were apportioned and whether the subdivision is even permissible, because when you show the Department of Buildings just what you're interested in, it doesn't describe where it came from, and it's actually the backyards in part of this multifamily development that looks like it was built in might have been built in the early 60s. If it was built in the 50s, obviously, then it's a different zoning situation. The house's floor plate is very constrained by the flag lot. So I'd like to know, there's so many rules that apply to a flag lot. Does it satisfy the distance between buildings on the combined zoning lot? So this is a back-to-back minimum distance. In any event, assuming all of those things are dealt with, we need a cross easement access agreement for access and a maintenance agreement for the driveway. We need fire department sign off. DEP on March 4th issued comments, and I didn't find a sign-off letter. DEP.
Yeah, so you're talking about the March letter?
Yeah, I didn't find a sign-off. It says DEP will continue to review.
Right, yeah, that's what we have.
Yeah, there's nothing more than that, okay. Anybody else?
I had the same comment regarding easement.
Okay.
I just had a question about the community board resolution. I just was not sure what they meant by ensure that water retention on site is at 120%. How do they expect that to be monitored? And what do they expect to be put in place to achieve 120%? Even what is that?
I don't know what
that was my question.
That's interesting, because this is, what's interesting about this site is the front of the zoning lot is in a floodplain and the back isn't.
Right.
So the existing house is dealing with floodplain conditions with an existing house, and I assume that it's in a floodplain, but then the water is percolating into maybe that's what they're concerned about, the water then percolates to this section of the house that's not in the floodplain. And they actually show on the driveway like 5 dry wells. Maybe that's one way that the property owner is dealing with the concern of the community board, that the absorption rate is dealt with dry wells.
Well, I figured because they're
many-
replacing
many?
foresty area with pavement and building,
Yeah.
so they're worried about the water being displaced. But I just was wondering what in the world they were talking
Yeah.
about and how do you monitor that?
Okay.
8 dry wells, I mean.
8
as-
dry wells.
Yeah.
That, it's interesting what you're bringing up about the water absorption. We have another case coming up where the applicant talks a lot about how they're doing sustainable design. And I don't, how do we require it? But I ask every single time, why are the surfaces impermeable? Why can't you do these kinds of those water retention beds and things like that that are part of the landscaping? And, I don't know that it's that much more expensive to sort of do the right thing on the planning, but we don't seem to see this interest on the part of most of the developers. Everything should be done as a sustainable design concept, especially where you have, everywhere anyway, but especially where you have water flooding problems.
I also had a question about the 30 by 30 foot staging area. It seems like from the drawings that part of that is going through the parking spaces.
Yes.
And they don't dimension the parking space depth so that you know that a car would actually fit in without protruding into the 30 by 30, because it's my understanding that the 30 by 30 staging has to be remaining clear.
Yes.
Maybe that is the reason, the 30 by 30, sorry, it's going up. And the parking area.
Is
Right,
there,
yeah,
we
but
don't
we're
know.
not sure what is this measurement? Is it 15 feet, is it 20 feet?
So we need to know the
Yeah,
dimension
so
of
that
the
we
two.
know that the car
I
would
think
be
it's-
out of the
Right.
staging area.
It's shown as 18. The
It's
dimension.
18?
It's
Oh,
shown
okay.
here on the
No,
side
that's
as 18.
assuming that the red line is the same as the black line, right?
It's just,
Yeah,
well, it's
to
only
the
up to
curb
the.
line.
It's
Yeah,
up to
yeah.
the curb line,
Okay.
that's 18
Oh,
feet.
okay, all right.
Is that,
That's what I needed to know.
okay. So you're okay with it?
I'm fine.
But it's fire department who. are
Right, that's the
looking at
fire
that.
department call. I was
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah, that's fair. Other comments?
No, I just thought that the 8 wells, the 8 dry wells are probably too much for this property. I'm wondering, is there any plan to, like, divert any drainage from any other property to this one? Because I believe 8 dry wells for a house like that is kind of,
Well, but it's not just this house, it's the existing house. The fact that now in 2000, based on the 2017 firm map, this is in a major floodplain, so maybe that's what they're trying to do. Not that it works in a flood, I don't really even understand what the dry well is for in a flood. And floods.
the dry wells are not typically for flood. They
No.
are just for
For rain.
stormwater.
Yeah.
Yes, and like typical events. But if you get flood, it's a flooding,
Yeah.
And
including dry wells.
will DEP be looking into this in terms of number of drivers that would be required?
So this
Is
is the
that-
thing. This is the part where we don't know what DEP looks at, right? So they need to, obviously, there's requirements to meet energy requirements, sewer requirements, all those things as they develop the project, but I don't know where the dry wells fit into the story.
Probably it's it's because of the low infiltration rate, maybe? You don't know, but I
Maybe, and I think maybe it was installed to respond to concerns raised by community board, where the residents really have firsthand knowledge about the kinds of things that have to do with groundwater.
possible. In November submission, there is a map called topographic map. It's, first of all, it's not topographic, but it's kind of like a side streets map or something like that. I noticed that the boundaries it has some boundaries on it, and these boundaries are totally different from the tax map. Is this something that's like,
That's the borough president's, what do you call it? The borough president's street map effectively, right? They do call it a topo map, even though you're right, it doesn't show any contours. But
Yeah.
it's the street map, and it's, the tax map and the street map arguably match, but then we see so many streets that don't actually exist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so. So, or they have different names, they completely change the names, right?
I'm not concerned, the streets look like they are close, but the boundaries for if you look at the block between Kessel and Bard and Amelia, it's this block, the interior divisioning of the lots are kind of different.
Oh, of the lots,
Yeah, if you look at the tax lot.
Yeah.
I understand these are not tax lots,
yeah,
but I'm not sure what are these boundaries representing.
right.
Didn't they provide a site survey? I thought a site survey.
Yeah, but no, but he's talking about, this is a very old map,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know.
think
I
we
don't know
always-
without us sitting down and really looking at this or speaking to the borough president's topo department.
Okay.
They're the holders of the maps. Yeah. You can't really tell from
Yeah.
the survey.
I
If
think
anything,
we've
it's the
always
tax
used-
maps.
Right, I think we've always used those topo maps to just for the street purposes and never
Yes.
looked at those. We looked at the survey for the dimensions of, so it's like two separate maps doing two separate things.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
And these are such old historic maps, I don't think they have changed. It's kind of interesting to know the history.
Move on?
I just want to reiterate that I feel it's necessary to get some more detail about the subdivisions or
How this lot's relation to the lots around it, that's what I'm really most interested in right
Say that
now.
one more time?
More information about the subdivision of this lot and the relation that these lots have to the lots surrounding it.
Item number 6, 2019-185A, 57 Fletcher Street, Staten Island, and item number 7, 2019-186A, 53 Fletcher Street, Staten Island. It's the GCL 35.
Right. We have proof of initial filing and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends denial, and I'll read why. Motion to deny application passed because of the existing, I think, narrow roadway. It says exiting, but I think they mean existing narrow roadway. It would take away from street widening, would be irreparable damage to the neighborhood. Adjoining lot with street widening of Virginia would set a precedent. With the size of the property, more creative building can be done. Ability to develop further on current zoning lot. Motion passed to deny 31-0, one ineligible. I just want to clarify for us reading this, that the only two applications before us are for houses on lots 4 and 7, because I kept thinking that lot 13 was somehow involved in this, and that was why the community board was opposed. I was trying to understand what the community board is getting at. We have a December 31st sign-off from DEP. The statement of fact states that it does not believe that a waiver of the front yard setback requirements will be needed, even though the building is situated 10 foot forward of the widening line. That has not been our experience in Staten Island. In other words, that applicants who have not gotten the waiver have been kicked back here.
They have a 7210G objections.
Yeah, and I would recommend that the waiver be included in the request. They should look at example 3B in the TPPN that was attached, which actually wasn't attached. The TPPN attachment was corrupted, but it's easy enough to get a copy of it. Really, I would recommend they do that, or they're going to end up coming back here. So I don't see anything from DOT, but I'm not really understanding the community board's concerns, since the subject lot 4 doesn't have frontage on Virginia, and the subject side of Fletcher has houses built forward of the widening line on the adjoining blocks in both directions towards Bell and Clifton. So this particular block only has the existing house that's forward of the widening line, but it wouldn't do you any good, because you would have to, even if you said, okay, no more, you have those 2 blocks on either side where there have houses forward of the widening line. So I really don't understand the community board's concerns, and I don't understand their reference to Virginia, because the site doesn't front Virginia. Mm-hmm. And so that was why I thought, well, maybe they really mean lot 13, which is right in the middle of a widening. Or is more than a widening, right in the middle of a map street that's not improved, but I don't know. Any other comments?
I had similar confusion with why the community board was making that recommendation. I agree with you. Fletcher from end to end is built. It's built from Bell to Clinton, and all of it is, except for these 3 lots, everything is built, and they're built into the bed of the street. So Fletcher it's very unlikely it will ever get the opportunity to get rebuilt, God forbid, right?
Well, they'd have to condemn all the houses.
Yeah, city would have to condemn all the houses to widen the street, and that's not going to happen in the foreseeable future. And so I'm not sure why the community was making that recommendation. I had a couple of just basic zoning questions, and that is mostly with the zoning chart. Please revise the zoning chart regarding the lot area and width. It states the required lot area is 9,025 square feet minimum, which it is not. I think minimum is 2,375 square feet for one family and 3,135 square feet for 2 family homes. And based on whether it's 1 family and 2 family, the width of the lot varies. So it would be 25 foot wide for a 1 family home versus a 33 foot wide lot for a 2 family home.
These are 2 families.
So if it's 2 families, then the minimum lot area has to be 3,135 square feet, and the lot width has to be 33 feet wide. So So that needs to be indicated for each one of the tax lot. And please note that in the lower density lower density growth management area for a two-family detached home, the minimum lot area is 3,135 square feet with a minimum lot width, I said that. Okay, sorry.
3,135.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And minimum lot area is 33, and based on the survey map, tax lots 4 and 7 do not meet the lot area requirement for two-family.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
this is based on the survey map, and can only be built for one-family homes.
So the applicant should verify the zoning, so, just in case, to take a close look at the zoning to make sure they agree or we're in the right place for that. Okay, anybody else? And so these two projects are the ones that I was referring to where the applicant is going out of its way to do sustainable project with permeable surfaces and landscaping that retains rainwater and percolates it and so on, and I don't know why that's not just a required standard these days. Anyway, okay.
Regarding the PPP, they need to add like a note to the PPP indicating that it's gonna at least match the existing or comply with the requirements from the DOT, the minimum DOT requirements.
That the work that's being done will match existing what?
I believe they are proposing to remove part of the existing pavement and repave it on the front of the property.
That paving, the paving will match the existing?
Yes, the paving, the proposed pavement will match the existing one and will satisfy the minimum requirements
Okay.
of DOT.
Okay. Okay.
Move on?
Yeah,
No, nothing further.
Item number 8, 2019-303A, 55 Eckford Street, Brooklyn.
okay. We have proof of notice of hearing to officials, but I didn't find proof of service of the initial application to officials, and we have nothing from the community board, so that's when I get concerned that it wasn't served. On January 30th of this year, DOB submitted a letter stating that the permit was lawfully issued on March 22nd, 2004. I note that $30,000 in ECB fines are still owed and must be paid for us to consider the application. It claims there are no ECB fines, but you go online and it shows them.
Did you read the building department letter said the permit was revoked?
No.
Is it the wrong one? It's the wrong case?
Why, is there another letter? It says the permit was lawfully issued in March 22nd, 2004, and then, but they take no position on vesting. Really? There's another letter?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Let me read you the letter. Oh,
We're talking about Eckford, right?
yeah, Department of Buildings lawfully issued on March 22nd, 2004. The department performed the special audit of the permit on December 1st, 2016. This led to a notice to revoke with the objection, verify, demonstrate application compliance with 11-332 on all applicable documents.
That's another letter.
No, it's a January 30th letter.
Why is it talking about 11-332?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to reach out to Ben to talk to him about that. I was confused by the letter, but
I don't know what that means. If the permit was lawful, so this has
been previously approved in several
Yes.
different iterations.
Right.
And then we told them they had to file a new A case because the changes that we decided.
So I don't understand. If it was lawfully issued back in the day when this board determined that it had vested rights under
330.
Right?
Yeah, and then a vested right under the common law, then how does it unhave.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to.
I don't understand
Talk
that
to
as
Ben
a
about
concept.
that.
How does it go from being
BOB.
lawful
They
to
could-
being years later unlawful?
They could have done no work on it.
They did no work, but,
Right.
so how does it turn into unlawful? So first, it got extensions of time under, so the assumption, in order to apply for an extension of time to complete, was that they actually vested under the statutory vesting, right? So DOB, even though, so the history is the DOB audited this project before the zoning change. So they got a stop work order and they were being audited for whatever reasons, we don't know. And then the audit was lifted, I mean, the stop work was lifted, and then there was a zoning change, so, or the zoning change, and then the stop work was lifted, so DOB wasn't concerned about vesting. There was obviously enough in place, foundations were in place, right? So, vest. Then they didn't complete construction in the 2 years they have to complete construction. That's why they had to come here.
Right.
So, permit validly issued, 2 times the board decided that. And then they came for vested rights under the common law. Board decided it was validly issued because DOB told them it was validly issued. So I don't understand how DOB changes its mind now.
Especially since they didn't do anything.
Yeah, and they didn't do anything.
It sounds like there just might be a lack of procedural clarity on their part, since the provision they're citing has to do with vesting, and this is obviously a vesting application.
Right, okay.
And not a substantive provision of zoning, or not a substantive provision for why the building permit would not have been validly issued.
Okay, so maybe we just get that letter, ask them updated to explain.
I'll reach out to
I
him
mean,
again.
because I don't understand that.
Yeah, I'll reach out
Okay.
to him again, it's okay.
So, but I do want to say there are 30,000 in ECB fines. They have to pay them. This site has been in a state of stop-start construction for 15 years. It appears that the last time any construction work was done at the site was in 2006, based on the materials we've been given. The site was actually considered a stalled site by DOB. You see that in some of DOB's inspections. They state it's stalled site, but I didn't see it enrolled in the program. In any event, it has been many years since most sites in that program restarted and construction completed on those stalled sites. So I'm concerned about this site now. If granted, this would be the 4th owner since the initial permit in 2004. So I'd like to know, how does the applicant satisfy the 3-pronged test subsequent to initial vesting set forth in Putnam Armonk v. Town of Southeast? The 3 prongs are abandonment, recoupment, and consideration of public safety, health, and welfare, which have manifested themselves since the time of the zoning map change. The most obvious of the prongs that must be addressed here is that of recoupment, as we are 4 owners since the time of permit, and presumably this contract vendee or the seller is aware of the risks that the site might be subject to prior zoning, hence the sale price must be discounted to reflect that, or I am assuming, right? The 2 prior owners made profits on the sales with respect to land value, and the current and proposed owner made none of the $3.3 million in expenditures listed in the prior vesting applications. According to the recording information, the first owner recouped nearly all of its expenditures in its sale to the second purchaser. That site sold for $3.5 million. And the second purchaser doubled its money in spite of doing no work on the site. It sold for 6 something. A deed seems to be missing from Acris to complete the chain of title to the current owner, 55 Eckford lots. But based on transfer tax data that was recorded, they paid something like they received something like 6.85 million. And then there was a bank foreclosure for almost 5 million. So I don't know what the case law is when buyers make offers based on assumptions of discretionary approvals, but what you're talking about is this last chain, either the seller or the contract vendee claiming that I paid a lot of money based on an assumption that the vesting would continue. And my understanding of the Putnam case is that that developer was viewed as having recouped its investment because it sold off half the houses on the development site and just wasn't allowed to continue with the other half. So it had recouped its investment, and there were other things, like this water system was a failure and things like that. So I don't know. So, and then to the public welfare point, in 2015, Curbed polled its readers about the 9 buildings in construction in Brooklyn at that point, and judged this one the ugliest, and the year before that, the saddest building under construction at the time. Even YIMBY described the building as unattractive, and YIMBY likes every project. I note that the architect of record at the time may not be the architect today if one is actually has been retained. So maybe the ugly factor would be reduced because it's just a shell. It's not even really a shell. It's just a frame with planks. And I didn't find any information on what is permitted to be constructed under current zoning, whether the existing structure on the site is still suitable for reuse after sitting unprotected for 15 years, or if any of it is reusable for a complying building. So it's an unusual thing, but I don't think that these vesting situations should go on indefinitely. You could say 35 years from now, 10 different owners, each one recouping. There's got to be a limit, no? One of the owners made $6.5 million by doing nothing. So, no, $3 million by doing nothing because the profit on the purchase was $3 million. So they paid maybe some taxes.
It's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. Other comments?
I have no comment.
I had comment I needed clarification, because it appeared to me like there was no work done since the first rezoning, which it seems like there was enough work done to vest, but since the rezoning, they do then total the amount of work done, but it seems like that's the same amount of work that was done originally.
Right.
And the only difference is now they've added the soft costs in. Previously, it was just a hard cost analysis, and I guess now that it's an A case, they added in those soft costs, which is fine, but it doesn't mean that there was extra work done. It just means now they can consider more costs. So I think they should just clarify that point. And then also, the serious loss, you definitely raise some very valid points, but even if you were to take them at face value and not talk about all of the previous sales, they more than double their serious loss, even though there was nothing else done.
Right.
And they don't itemize them or break down the total amount, except to say additional design time delays and revenue loss based on the current market value of additional floor area. And it seems like the additional $2 million in loss is what they think is the appreciation of the real estate over time, but they really need to state that. And they don't. So that's my issue. I mean, my understanding of vesting is that once you vest initially, I didn't think you had to do additional work each time to retain your vesting. It's not laid out in the statute that you have to then keep compiling additional work. However, it does raise the question of if 15 years in, you haven't done a thing, are you ever going to do a thing?
Actually, I do have
Yeah.
comments, I just didn't think they were important, but I think, fine. So the statement says site preparation, excavation, file ensuring 100%.
Sorry, you need to speak.
Okay. The statement of fact states, site preparation, excavation, piling, ensuring 100% of the foundation, the installation of concrete slab, and the erection of 6 floors of steel was completed before the rezoning. Now, somewhere again, it says after the rezoning. So it was, to me, that was not clear. In some parts, it says after, some part it was before. Because in some instances, it says subsequent to rezoning, and in other by the rezoning date. So it was not clear what part of the work was done before the rezoning and subsequent to the rezoning, how much additional work was done?
My understanding with this is, there was a zoning map change on May 11th, 2005. Then a permit was issued in July, was reissued, because there was a stop work order right before that. The permit was reissued in July, so 2 months later, presumably because DOB considered the job vested, statutorily vested, right? Then they show photos in September of steel frame to the 5th floor in place with steel planks at the 2nd and 3rd floor. Then they show photos taken in 2006, so March 2006, with steel to the 7th floor and planks to the 5th floor. Then there's a stop work order for whatever reason, I don't know. And then we begin the whole process of the extensions. Maybe the stop work order is because they didn't finish within the 2 years. But I don't think anything is new since the 7th floor and planks to the 5th floor. So that was 2006 when those photos were taken.
Then the statement of fact just needs to be consistent, because some places it's subsequent and then it's so.
Yeah, it's definitely jumping around,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
I just have one question. Is there a financial relationship between the owner named Eckford Greenpoint LLC and the current owner, which I understand is 55 Eckford 1875 LLC?
So I can't answer it directly, but I did check all the deeds, and there's a finance, this finance company, Madison something or other, they're related to one of the owners, because there was a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So because the owner didn't make payments, the lender steps in as the owner. And you don't see the transfer of property, you don't see a deed transfer to that owner because they had a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And then it gets transferred again because Madison, I guess, was not a developer. I think it was 2013, 55 Eckford lots, buys from Eckford Greenpoint. And Eckford Greenpoint is the bank that took over. That's my understanding.
Yeah, they were the third owner, Eckford.
Greenpoint, but they're so 55 Eckford, so they all have the similar names. That's what makes it so
So
confusing.
55 Eckford was the second owner.
No, there's two kinds. 55 Eckford LLC, Eckford Greenpoint Pilot, and then 55 Eckford lots. But the Eckford lots, I don't find a deed recorded. So I
I
don't
thought that's
actually
the last
understand
one.
how that happens. But you do see that they pay transfer taxes.
So the last one is 55 Eckford Acquisition LLC.
Oh, well, then that's based on what?
So,
Anyway, so we can't figure out this chain of title. They have to do it for us, but because it's very confusing, even on Acris, it doesn't match what they say, in other words. Any
Yeah.
other thing?
I too think that there is a Putman issue here, and I think it's going to be a very difficult hurdle, particularly because the abandonment clause, I'm going to focus more on abandonment, which 15 years of not doing anything but purchasing and selling the property doesn't seem like it does fall well within Putman, which I believe was 30 years of abandonment. But the second part is the public welfare portion that I wonder what would be a better outcome for this property.
Yeah.
Would it be better because right now what it is just an empty frame,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is more of an eyesore than a building would be.
Yes.
So practically speaking, I don't know how that public welfare part would go.
Right.
That's
That's one of the arguments they make without actually getting into the three prongs. They
Right.
say it's an eyesore, et cetera, but when we go to YIMBY, who is usually pro, they say it's a really ugly building, but at least it's a building.
Southgate. Zoning calendar, continued hearing items, item number 9, 15715BZ, 3925 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, the last hearing was adjourned because the architect did not appear as required. So we need the architect and owner present. Absolutely no excuses, and if necessary, I'll exercise subpoena authority, which we've never done.
Yeah.
Right? I don't
Yes,
want
ma'am.
any more excuses on this project. It's been here forever. And each time it's like, oh, I'm sorry, the so-and-so isn't available. No excuses. At extremely long last, however, the applicant provides materials to clarify that the house was not built according to the DOB-approved plans and exceeded the allowable floor area significantly by enclosing spaces that were shown as open to below and adding more headroom in the attic. Converting storage areas to bedrooms does not increase floor area as stated in the cover letter, so that's misrepresenting how it works. The application has now been amended to reflect these facts. It has taken an outrageous 2.5 years to clarify this. Hence the reason that I'm so angry about what I'm seeing. I note with ongoing steaming frustration that the other questions posed at the last review session went unanswered and uncorrected. The floor area shown on the last set of existing drawings is different from that shown on the recently provided chart. This is done without any explanation for the discrepancy. Shouldn't existing be existing? It is what it is. Likewise, without any explanation for the change, the proposed floor area is different from the last set of drawings. What changed in the building that brought this number down, other than us saying, bring the number down? Floor area diagrams were finally provided, but it doesn't look like the architect has any experience doing them. You're supposed to dimension the rectangles, do the math, and add them up. It's area. You take the areas of each rectangle, you show what the dimensions are, you show inside the area, the actual area of the rectangle, and then you show the addition so that we can verify that the floor area you're claiming is the floor area. Inaccessible space is floor area if the structural headroom exceeds the stated height. The roof says the space is inaccessible. That's not the same thing as not being floor area. I'm distressed because I think this architect doesn't know some basics about what the requirements are for zoning. And the architect and the owner's representative, counsel, is not checking the drawings, so is not making any corrections that need to be made. It's inexcusable. Storage space is also not excluded from floor area, so either the space in the attic is for mechanical equipment or it isn't, and it's floor area. The description on the mechanical room says mechanical storage. There's no such thing as mechanical storage, it's one or the other. I pose questions about the front yard not matching the approved DOB drawings and the absence of a parking space on the proposed, whereas there was one on the DOB drawings. Not a word in the submission we received mentioned this. They state in the BSA calculation sheet that the parking space is that the absence of a parking space is an existing non-compliant condition. It's completely not true because the approved DOB drawings show a parking space. Also, the BSA calculation sheet was not revised to reflect the changes on the plans, so all of the floor areas and FAR are incorrect, as is the statement that the absence of a parking space is an existing non-compliance. And I would like them to confirm that the proposed work has not already been done. I don't actually know how to deal with this application, other than if tomorrow we don't see everyone appear, I would like to move to deny it for failure to cooperate. I mean, it's like, I don't know what else to do. We have something like 12 hearings here, many of which were adjourned. It's maybe not 12, I'm just so mad. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You have the
7,
plans that
8,
Henry
9, 10. I'm not so far off. 11 hearings many of which were adjourned. I know there were changes in some of the things and so on, but, that might account for 3 adjournments, not 4, 5, 6, 7, not 7 adjournments.
Okay, you have the most recent plans, right?
I have what I have.
Okay, now I just want to make sure.
And if they submit on Friday, that's also not acceptable, right? Like, what kind of, it's just, I don't even have words anymore for what this is. All right.
Okay, not to add to your comments, but I would.
Please do add.
But my, one recommendation is in the seller plan, a note should be added and that it is not to be used for any sleeping or habitable purposes. I think we have a standard note that we.
Move on? Item number 10, 2016-4469BZ, 4923 Astoria Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, nothing was submitted on this. This is the 3rd adjournment.
This is a withdrawal.
Oh, this is a withdrawal?
They requested a withdrawal
Oh. When was that?
last week.
Oh, was it in the folder?
It should be in the folder. I'll check.
I didn't see.
I think we got an email.
I think I forwarded an email as well.
But it needs to be in the folder. How do we know?
So what does that mean, if they're withdrawing?
They're withdrawing it.
They will, I did
Wait.
it as of right. That's the only thing.
It's a
we can do.
legalization.
Yeah, so are they removing?
Yeah.
They would
What does
have
that
to.
mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, we didn't,
How can they?
Well,
when we talked to them,
they
they didn't.
hadn't, well, it's been illegal, right? So
Yeah,
we
so-
would reach out to the Department of Buildings,
Yeah.
as we
Right.
often do for appropriate enforcement action.
Okay, all right. So let's do that right away.
Okay. Item number 11, 2859BZ, 3030 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
On the open issue of egress, which, by the way, was noted first by the community board, not me, so it was the community board who insisted that there be a proper second means of egress. The applicant insists that now it will be used only for Zumba classes, which again, I don't find believable. So meanwhile, this site's website, because it's an existing it's a legalization, shows the intended route through that room blocked by exercise equipment, and for whatever reason, this really long, it's probably an extension cord running from one side to the other, so what tripping hazard? That's how it's actually being used according to their website, nonetheless. So I would just have to say, if the applicant wants to go this way, we just say in our resolution very clearly that the board directs DOB to review the fire egress routes, and in particular, the second means of egress route, which is through the room now labeled dance studio. And to note that this is a legalization and the gym is currently operating, and regular inspections are recommended or something like that. The acoustical information was put on the drawings as requested. So what can I say? And it's interesting because in reviewing all the other PCEs and in going to a PCE, several, I have never once gone through a room where there's a class going on to get to the fire exit. So there may be a tertiary exit directly from the room, but I don't have to go into that room to get out. Okay.
Item number 12, 2018-168BZ, 1769 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
26, yeah.
26, sorry.
Oops. All right. The rear wall, again, they need to bring the architect and the owner. The rear wall at the attic was cut back all the way, and it is now flat roof in spite of all the protestations of the architect at the last hearing. So, so now, and I think it must be because the owner met with the neighbors who were very upset about this project and must have agreed to just cut down the third floor totally. So now the rear yard extensions in the, now the extensions in the rear yard is it's a 27-foot rear yard, which is 21 foot 3 inches high to the roof, and then it sets back from further at the attic level another 18 feet. So it's basically where the existing houses are. The existing houses have like 47-foot rear yards. It seems to me that the drawings and the BSA calculation sheets are coordinated, but I'd like Mr. Vine to please verify. Okay. Okay.
Move on, oh, I'm sorry. Item number 13, 2019-25 BZ, 4048 Commercial Street, Brooklyn. There has been a request for an adjournment.
Yes.
Item number 14, 2019-26 BZ, 233 Nevin Street, also known as 236 Butler Street, Brooklyn.
Right. Sorry. This one, we're waiting actually for EAS-related stuff, so if Tracy wants to chime in.
Yeah, they revised the EAS. They're trying to make several arguments about why hazmat and air quality review doesn't have to be detailed and ongoing, but DEP initially hasn't agreed with that. So we are requesting a phase 1 to continue the hazmat, and they're going to review the latest air quality submission.
We thought they were going to submit an adjournment request, but it
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Oh, did they? You told,
No,
suggested?
Yeah, we had a discussion, but I don't know if there's something else, reason they did not submit anything.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, the applicant has stated that construction has started. It's for an as-of-right use. And if, does that in any way change the environmental review?
Right. We have had other cases where if the building is built, they could do an indoor air quality test for hazardous materials instead of the, soil boring.
So is DEP aware of that? Would that
Yeah.
be factored in? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. And the other thing is, last time we had comments about the DOI report on the individual who's a part of this climbing gym. And my notes say that we were going to just call DOI to make sure they were okay. But the applicant also, I just want to make sure whichever thing we do, right? And there were 2 prior cases, and on November 21st, the applicant submitted a letter showing the resolutions in the prior other Cliffs cases, where the resolution reflected the DOI determination. So I want to alert our council to those other resolutions so that the language in the resolution is similar.
Similar, yeah.
To show that we did get this DOI report and the board determined that situation, that, I don't know if it was a misdemeanor or whatever, is not related to running a climbing gym, right? Either that or and we call DOI, or that, one or the other. That's sort of council call, I would say. Okay. Anybody else?
Item number 15, 2019-30 BZ, 2705 East 28th Street, Brooklyn. There has been an adjournment request.
Yeah.
Item number 16, 2019-77 BZ, 1134 Fulton Street, Brooklyn.
We still don't have a community board recommendation or proof of initial service in the folder. So how do we know the community board even knew about this application? So we really need this. It's one thing if we don't find proof of service, but the community board had a resolution, then we know they were served, right? Drawings were improved and are now legible. Since this will be a mixed-use building, we should condition our approvals on no vibration or sound being a disturbance to neighbors. I want to say because the acoustical and vibration isolation for this cellar use are very limited. It's not, I mean, it's basically standard sheetrock walls. So I'd recommend, and on padding on floor, so there's nothing on the ceiling as far as I can tell. I'd actually like to recommend to the operator that rather than wait for the bad stuff to happen, they do a better job on the acoustical separation, because it's much more expensive to do that after. And it is a residential building, et cetera. And I want to note that Commissioner Sheta observed some other issues with the application materials last time, and I just want to make sure that those were addressed. Because you talked about coordination among the drawings and so on, so you're okay with it?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Bless you. Okay.
Item number 17, 2019-93 BZ 3203 Bedford Avenue, Brooklyn.
I'd like to alert the owner that in response to submissions concerning the structural integrity of the construction and its ability to handle live loads for more than 400 persons, we have requested that DOB conduct an audit of the drawings and inspect the site. I note that the quote approved alteration 1 plans, which I'm quoting from the cover letter, recently submitted are for a house. Hence, the live load capacity is not reflective of the actual use. DOB could not have, unlike as stated in that letter, could not have reviewed the drawings with respect to this occupancy, since the drawings nowhere indicate the proposed use. The March 2019 Schedule A, pursuant to which a permit was issued, indicated the use was residential. In 2018, there was an inspection at the rear that indicated underpinning and shoring work ongoing without permits, and that such work was, quote, questionable. That's a DOB inspector's response to a complaint. There are still approximately $30,000 in ECB fines owing. We don't move on this until they are paid. The adjacent property owner submitted a letter stating that he doesn't want a fence between his and the synagogue's property. I think that's okay, but in the event of a sale of either the neighbor's home or the synagogue, or in the event that the situation changes and the neighbor reconsiders this, the synagogue should put up a fence. So we need a restrictive declaration to, so stating and obliging. So the applicant should prepare that restrictive deck. It looks like the work is finished based on photographs, even though they had no right to be building this during the pendency of the application, since so much of the building is non-complying, hence illegal. Read illegal. Very arrogant assumptions on the part of ownership. That's what these are. I feel like Yoda, very arrogant assumptions these are. And despite the cover letter's statement that the congregation is aware, we could demand that they remove it. So the short of it is that all of our directions to modify the plans were ignored, with excuses for not doing any of them. The new drawings do show the building narrower at the front, but the cover letter doesn't discuss this difference. I don't even see compliance with the R2 planting requirements, which it says it complies with, but I don't see how. The planting requirements refer to landscaping on the zoning lot, not on the sidewalk. The architect knows this. They need to describe how the trash room located in the kitchen at the back of the site will be utilized to ensure that there is no trash stored in the side yards or on the sidewalk. I don't see any sign that the ramp was built, nor that an elevator, this is in the actual real life, right? Nor that an elevator was installed, since there's no visible bulkhead and there are windows where the elevator should be. So I'd like to know what's going on here. I mean, we're already being, let's say, played for fools, and I don't like this.
To make sure the architect is here and the owner?
Yes, architect and a person responsible for ownership needs to come to the hearing. I'd like fire department to inspect and give us an update. Make sure that it's not being occupied, because it kind of looks like it could be. There's actually a little sign on the wall that could mean that it's actually being used already. And I find the whole behavior of the ownership outrageous and probably not discouraged by the architect. So,
Please bear with me, I have a lot of comments.
Okay, good.
And I have discussed this with you, so I think some of the
Yes.
things you mentioned about the restricted deck is.
yes,
consistent with
the
mine.
fence was, yeah.
So, looking at the revised plan, the front entrance has been reduced in width. However, the total floor area has increased from the earlier submission. The total floor area would be, as proposed, is 4,124 square feet, which is an increase from the previous submission, which is 3,916, where the front building was completely flushed entirely. There was no setback in the front, so I would like a clarification on that. I am extremely concerned about the rear yard condition. The abutting, the applicant provided some photos indicating the abutting rear yard conditions. And the proposed or the built condition would maintain a rear yard depth of 12 feet and 4 feet. And the 4 feet is the portion from where the stair bulkhead comes down, and the 12 feet is where you have where there isn't the stair bulkhead. The applicant states that the rear yard depth on this social block is typically 20 feet. In that case, there is more the reason to not allow further encroachment into the rear yard. The stair structure is 15 feet wide and 8 feet deep. There are other ways of providing the second means of egress, and I looked at the plan. The revised plan now is proposing to let's just go to the second means of egress, the alternatives. One can be, you can provide two ways of providing exit staircases, second means of egress, without having to have a separate stair bulkhead. It can be from the existing built envelope. One could be where the previous kitchen was, so the stair runs linearly without a turnaround, a straight line staircase along the rear lot line, and it will end up at the same location, though 8 feet inward onto the side yard. Or alternatively, have another staircase that runs parallel to the side lot of the building, which is within the lot line. At most, you will lose, it will require relocating, not even losing, relocating 6 of the seats on the upper floors and lower floors. And since there isn't any kitchen, and on the second floor, you can relocate the stairs there, and the stair bulkhead is high enough where some of the stairs on some of the seating can be located below the stair bulkhead, where there's enough headroom clearance. So I do not see the need for a separate bulkhead, stair bulkhead extending into the rear yard. I do also have concern with regards to the revised plan as to the relocation of the AC units. In the previous one, the AC units were going to be on the roof. Now it's been relocated to that 12-foot rear yard that is being proposed. Given that we have a 12-foot rear yard with all the AC systems located, it's going to create a lot of noise, and it doesn't create, and if the neighbors do not want a fence, it's going to create a noise issue. There isn't adequate buffer. It's visually unsightly. I looked at the section and I do not see why the AC systems cannot be brought back to the same location on the roof. So they should look at that. You stated the same thing as I have concerns about not having any fences along the side, along the property line. I'm most concerned about the side lot line, especially the side lot line that is shared by the building to the left. It has a driveway and, and this building side yard, which is going to be used for ingress and egress, is right next to the driveway, so I do think a physical protection should be considered, but if the current owner is not willing to, I agree with you that a restrictive deck should allow for the future owner of that abutting building to ask the synagogue to build up a fence or provide necessary means of sound, noise, visual buffer from that side yard, to allow for privacy and other things.
Right, and I just want to just pick up one thing that you just said. I'm at the point where I say, no, you don't look at it, because when we asked them to look at it, the response was, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. So now the direction is, do it, okay? So moving forward, these are not recommendations, these are demands, and if you don't do it, then no variance, have a nice house. That's all I have to say. Okay, anybody?
I agree with you about the question about the ramp being necessary, and the pushback is a little disturbing because they have procedures in place that they really don't seem to need it in terms of having the access to the elevator at grade and then going up or down. I don't understand then why you would need a ramp.
Right.
If you have access. And the whole argument that, well, you can't use the elevator on Shabbos, well, they have Shabbos elevators
Right,
that stop
yeah.
on every floor automatically. And then they also said that they're still providing access on the first floor for people who don't want to use the elevator. So
Right.
then, I don't even understand the argument.
Right, well, they're arguing, I think, that some people won't even use a Shabbos elevator, but then I would have to say, so all those people live on the first floor of their apartment buildings?
Right, no, I agree with you. Some people won't even use the Shabbos elevator, but can't they get into the first floor? I mean,
Well, so a disabled person would need an elevator, right? So the ramp is for the disabled person. But I'm not sure that it's true that people won't use a Shabbos elevator, because according to that, 100% of those people who are disabled live on the first floor of an apartment building.
I think also the statement said that if, especially during high holidays, if there is a need to accommodate a female congregant
Yeah.
on wheelchair, they will
put it in the
put
first
it
floor,
on the first
yes.
floor, so.
No, but the issue is that and this is the choice again, because they built this building in a house, right? When you have disability issues, you build at grade, so you don't have this kind of step. Because they insisted on this kind of bizarre alteration to illegally construct this thing. Now they're confronted with some realities, that they have a level change they have to address. And to fill up the entire side yard with a ramp, which compromises egress, et cetera, and looks terrible, and they didn't even build it, so they're probably not intending to comply with ADA requirements, because they didn't build anything to house the elevator shaft, nothing.
And that's really their problem. So they'd have to find a way to address that.
Yes.
And that should be a note to DOB.
A note. We're so far away from notes.
That is true, I agree, but
Okay.
okay.
Okay, anybody else, any other comments?
I don't know, I don't want to scare people, but the reason we asked for the audit
Yes.
is when I looked at the two things that actually alerted me. One of them is the letter from the professional engineer. My understanding is he's the one who inspected the underpinning work and the structural alteration that's done in the building. The letter simply give like 5 points. The concrete is 4,000 PSI. The span of the building is 26 feet. The walls were replaced by 14 gauge steel joist at 12 inches, and then the structure as described can support 100-pound live load. First scary item here is the language. It actually reflects like the knowledge of the person who's testifying that this structure is stable. 100-pound live load means that I'm slightly over 100, so if I go there and I stand on the roof, that would be a problem. Live loads measured in PSF. I understand that he put the floor load in the letter, but concrete is 4,000 PSI. So what? If you could have a structure with 10,000 PSI concrete and it is not safe. You could have a structure with 3,000 PSI concrete and it is good. You underpin 4 feet, good, but where is the proof that this building, this underpinning work is designed to withstand the loads that are coming to or anticipated from the building while it's used as a house of worship and public assembly place? This is one thing. The other thing is I looked at the drawings. When I read this letter, I was like suspicious. Then I said, let me take a look at the drawing. So I went to the DOB approved drawing, and I'm here begging the DOB. If architects are authorized to sign and seal structural drawings, please reconsider this. This is for the public of the city. Again, if the architects are authorized to sign and seal excavation support drawings, I'm not sure how's that. I'm coming from, I did practice in Africa. Even in Africa, they don't do that. So we shouldn't be doing this here. This is, that architectural drawing is entitled SOE, I'll get to the number, but A-300, it has an underpinning detail, and in this detail, there is number 8 dowel that connects the wall to the underpinning pier. I'm not sure how this is gonna be installed. I believe it's the mission impossible. Then when you go to the drawing at the end, it's called SOE-100-00, and it is signed and sealed by the architect. Guess what? The dowel is gone, so there is no dowel anymore, but there is a steel shim. And you know what? The steel shim, the orientation of the steel shim is the opposite. So this reflects like that how caring is the person who's preparing these kind of drawings. The width of the underpinning pier on the SOE drawing is 2 feet. On the architectural plans is just 1.5. I'm not sure if they did any borings. I understand that in the drawings they mentioned that the soil material should be 2 TSF, 2 tons, should withstand allowable bearing capacity of 2 tons per square foot. Is this enough? I ran the number roughly and I'm not sure. One more thing they are talking about, they replaced the wall, I'm not sure which wall exactly, with steel stud wall. If we're talking about a brick wall that previously this was a house and the brick wall is receiving the loads and transmitting them to the foundation. Now you cut the foundation, you put underpinning piers to dig deeper, and then you put a stud wall to do what? To take the loads coming to the brick wall and take him to the underpinning pier? Possible, but I'm not sure. And what I'm concerned about is the connection between the brick wall, the existing wall or the existed wall, and the new underpinning pier. And this cellar now, or this basement is not a joke. It's not 6 feet deep. Now it's at least 10 or 11 feet deep. So that side pressure from water, from soil, from if you're gonna have people walking, you might have like 200 people walking out in the same time. So this is a significant city charge on the ground, and it's gonna push that wall laterally So did you check the connection between the existing wall and the underpinning pier? All these kind of questions. Even, you know what, even if I have a good staff structural engineer working under me and I'm designing something like that, and I gave him the task to do it, the first thing I look at it when he gave me this is, and says, this is done, I go over these checks. I don't feel that the kind of people who wrote the PE letter or the architect who signed and sealed this are aware of checking these kind of things. So DOB, take a look at this and please again, reconsider authorizing architects to sign and seal something that, by the way, in Egypt, the guy who should certify a structural stability for a building or sign and seal excavation support systems should be a consultant engineer. Over there are no PEs. When you graduate, you're authorized to work. You can seal and sign drawings, but to sign and seal on a structural stability, you have to be a consultant, and a consultant engineer, by law over there, should first of all be certified from the authorities, and number two, should hold 25 years of structural experience.
Wow.
I'm not sure how can an architect sign and seal on a structural stability of a building like that and on excavation. So,
Commissioner, I have a question. Would DOB be able to, upon their own independent investigation, determine what the floor PSF is on this building? Because I'm sure that we're going to receive another report that says, oh, that was a scrivener's error, this is really 1,500, I meant to write 15,000 PSF on each floor. Would DOB be able to determine what it is?
I did work on buildings that are 70-story tall. I have discussed with DOB engineers about very sophisticated, complicated finite element analysis for foundations, for non-traditional foundations. I believe DOB, of course, they have personnel who can look at stuff like that and determine whether they are okay or not.
Plus-
But I believe they don't have the time to like look at, they consider probably something like this is a 2-story or 3-story building.
Right, right.
It's a small house.
No, sure, it's a small,
But-
well, because they were reviewing a house, not a 400-plus capacity structure, right? They were reviewing for a house. It could be made out of wood frame. I mean, they want to use C-joists here, have a nice time, but it's only going to carry the family and the dog, right? And so, not 400 people, but what I do want to say in response to Commissioner Shabetta's question, I've had the experience on construction sites where a DOB inspector comes in and it has to look at a particular thing, and it's closed up, and the inspector says,
Right.
I don't care, dig it up, open a hole. So what they might have to do, because we're concerned about the underpinning, is they might have to dig holes along the underpinning to show that it's no longer questionable. And by the way, right, they have their own inspector saying that the work was questionable. Now, why it didn't go further than that, I don't know. I don't understand, but just saying. So we're going to certainly speak to the safety squad. I know we've already reached out.
Yeah.
I have a general structural question. Is there any reason why the AC units and all of that was originally proposed to be in the attic structurally cannot be kept there?
Which unit?
AC units.
The air conditioning units are now in the backyard instead of on the roof.
Is there any structural reason?
I don't know.
I just wanted to rule that out.
Yeah. Well, they said that it's all beefed up with steel channels and everything like that to
It
support
sounds
the
like
weight.
the floors are strengthened. They use channels at 12-inch steel channels. This is, at glance, this might be okay. But look, if you have a building, you don't have to have the roof collapse in order for this building to fall down.
Right.
Buildings, structural systems are like a chain. They are like a necklace. If you cut it from anywhere, it's gonna be gone. If the foundation is not good, if the soil is not good, if the concrete it's like you have a checklist. That bridge that collapsed in Florida it did collapse because of a trivial error during construction and during design. Somebody didn't check a case of loading during construction, and that's why it collapsed. In a building like this, it's a small building, like I said, and the underpinning is now, it's went through, they submitted, they constructed, they are done. I'm not sure if, when the DOB is gonna look at this as a house of worship, are they gonna open up what is closed before?
They could, they've done it. I don't know whether they do it now, but I've experienced it on plumbing, on electrical, on on construction methods. Why not? On fire stop, they do it. Take down the ceiling, show us that you did the fire stop. So, okay.
Item number 18, 2019-159BZ, 249 Church Street, Manhattan.
The fire department had issues with this application, so I don't know whether they were resolved. I didn't see a sign-off letter. The applicant said that they agreed to install sprinklering, but I don't know.
Okay. Item number 19, I'm sorry, may I go on? 2019-167BZ, 2467 Jerome Avenue in the Bronx.
Egress was the open issue here, and it may or may not still be an issue, as both means of egress, egress to within a few feet of each other at the southeast corner of the building. I don't know whether the rule is that the point of actual reaching the sidewalk has to be remote. So that's a question. The other thing is there's a means of egress that requires that a person go to a remote stair, that part's good, but then they walk all the way through around this back alley and then a side alley, and then they come back into the lobby, which is a lobby shared by others egressing directly from the space. But which is not one of the official fire stairs, but nonetheless, you're coming into the lobby where others are, I don't know. So it may not be enough. So fire department, please look, who knows what DOB will say. I just want to make sure whether or not that the site has not yet opened. Okay. Anybody else on this one?
Did we get a DOI sign off on this? Sorry.
On Jerome, yeah. I'll double check.
Are you sure?
I just don't have it in my notes. I may have missed it.
Okay, I'll double check. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, oh yeah, we do have DOI.
Okay.
My note says.
I don't have my file in front of me, sorry. Item number 20, 2019-170BZ, 385 Broadway, Manhattan.
Okay, with this one, so we heard this last week, or basically, right? And the reason we put it on for this hearing was because they just needed to change one little bitty thing. And instead, they submitted this big stack of drawings with bubbles showing lots and lots of changes. And this is a 5-story building, only 2 of which are relevant to the PCE. So I don't actually know why we got all of these drawings. The architect was, super detailed. It has window schedule, door schedules. It has like all this stuff. It's a construction set, right? And in addition to which, it's including all the floors, which we don't want to see. And the only question that we had was about sound attenuation. And then I actually don't even know whether the sound attenuation was addressed, but the drawings, it's just a big stack of complicated drawings. So the set needs to be reduced to just be the PCE set, and with information, about the entrance to the PCE and everything else on the first floor that gets you to the elevator and the stairs, grayed out or hatched out because it's not relevant. Otherwise, welcome to coming to the BSA, like every time you want to change a partition on the 4th floor, right? Because DOB won't know.
Okay, but you're okay with the location of the notations of where the acoustical?
No,
Because they
no.
gave you the sheets, And then they
The point
plot.
was, the drawings are so complicated.
I know, because they
didn't
add
know
all
where
this
to look.
extraneous.
Yeah, so I didn't know where to look. They gave us everything. They bubbled everything. And so what was I looking at?
Okay.
We were supposed to spend 5 minutes on this to check. And instead it became like going through an entire set of drawings. That wasn't the deal, all right? Do you have other?
Move the treatment room.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no massage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Move on? Item number 21, 2019-184 BZ, 4520 83rd Street, Queens. So they still have open hazmat, noise, air quality, DOT issues.
Right. Okay, the project scope changed. Right. And we only need look at the Phase 2 school now, which is much easier, and a good idea, because it was kind of funny to have a one-year temporary situation and have to unpack everybody and then build. The last hearing on this was November 26. We received a letter from DOT School Safety with comments, to which applicant responded in January. So we need school safety sign off, but also need DOT sign off on the EAS.
Right.
I'd also like the applicant to walk us through the proposed bus and parent pickup drop-off situation, as I'm still concerned about restricting the use of the opposite curb, the curb that's opposite the school, where there are businesses on that side that could and in future will change from the current observed uses. They keep saying, excuse me, the uses that are opposite don't have any needs for parking because they're not that type. But then it doesn't allow for that use to change to an active commercial use, like the grocery store that's up the street. And I don't like the idea of the school taking over the parking that's related to the businesses. And we had talked about having them take over. Luck of it is that they have that other side that's opposite the train tracks. So that's not being used by anybody.
But I had a question, don't those businesses orient towards the avenue because they have a parking lot? They're like a strip mall, and
It's a
that's the
strip mall.
back door
Yeah.
of the strip mall.
So
is
all the
on side
entrances,
street.
so all the restaurants and store that is on that block, that is block 1535, the access is from Broadway.
But if you look at
The only
their study on 83rd Street, the first half of that block has flatbeds and stuff like that. They're really actively using the sidewalk on 83rd Street for that restaurant,
It's
or
only-
the grocery store, sorry.
It's for the grocery store.
Yeah, but, so I'm saying, so that business is actively using 83rd Street, and they even have an area on their traffic study showing there's like a hot zone there where you don't want kids to walk because there's like all that stuff going on, right? On that side of 83rd. So, but their analysis is assuming that the business that's on the corner of 83rd and whatever that's called, Whitney, will continue forever to be this quiet use. And the idea of, like, assuming it isn't fair, because it could become, let's say the grocery store is doing so well and they expand into that. Now they're going to have more of that kind of activity on 83rd on their sidewalk. So I don't like the idea of the schools imposing to the other side of the street. Normally, they close off, you get the frontage in front of your school, and in this case, it's really great because there's way more frontage that you can get on the railroad side. So for instance, they're only showing a certain distance from the school for the bus load. Why can't they just take more distance? No one else is using it, right? So, they show all those cars parked at the front. I guess that's sort of parent drop-off area, or maybe it's parked cars. I don't really know what that is. Why can't they move those two buses to a place where the buses can make their turn and so on, and the kids are dropped off there, and then escorted, however they're escorted, instead of having to cross the street.
So one of the DOT recommendation was to change the circulation pattern of 86 and Whitney. So right now, it is from Broadway, you enter into Whitney, and then 86, and continue along 86th Street.
83rd.
Sorry, 83rd, thank you. 83rd Street, and these are all one-way, and 83rd connects to 45th Avenue. The recommendation was to reverse it, where the
Yes.
vehicles would enter from 45th, go down 83rd Whitney, and then out to Broadway. If you do that, then the bus can be located along the railroad
Yes.
railroad
Oh, I see,
side.
because they unload from
Then you're
that side.
unloading
Yeah,
from
yeah,
that side,
that
and
makes sense.
that makes it easy in that way. And if DOT is making that recommendation, they must have thought through all the circulation and the bus being able
Yes,
to
unload
make
on
that
the
turn,
correct
and then, so
Yeah.
this issue will not arise.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting,
the-
because, you know, in some countries, the school buses have two exits.
Even in New York.
Yes?
There are some buses that have two exits, one on each side.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, but you can't always guarantee you're going to get that apparently, but they do
Right,
have.
but all of them are, so that's just the way they're made, right? Yeah.
For some reason,
Okay.
they said they already submitted the two options. I wasn't sure why
Yeah, me
they
too.
did that.
I didn't know.
I'm not sure about their discussions with DOT, if it was finalized and DOT is recommending that.
I think they're hoping that if we approve it, we would approve both the options, and it would be based on DOT's further reconsideration and approval, that they will adopt the one that
I
DOT goes
would
for.
prefer the DOT
45th.
recommendation coming from
Yeah, me too.
Broadway and towards the railroads, then they can unload to the school side, not to the other side. It's gonna be less
You-
disturbance to the properties in the front.
Let me know when you're ready.
I just have one
Yeah, go ahead.
comment, and that is options 1 and 2, as shown on the plan, do not correspond with the school safety plan as per page 27.
Page
And then
27.
what about the page 27?
Options 1 and 2, as shown on the plan, the drawings, do not correspond with the school safety plan document, specifically page 27 of the school safety plan. It's really a simple notation of no standing between 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Somehow it got switched around, so just needs to.
Anything else? I think this is a really good project, so it's really just working out these, you know, and it's not one of those things where you're scared because there's scary things going on. It's a really, the idea of it being almost like a cul-de-sac, where the school is in this little zone where it can be really protected, is really good, as compared to some other projects. Okay.
You want? New cases, item number 1, 2019-37BZ, 600 West 58th Street, Manhattan.
This is a legalization. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Unfortunately, the posting in the lobby window does not invite written submissions. I would really like to encourage
Did I
staff,
miss that?
please,
Sorry.
to mount immediately onto our website a standard notice to lobby notice so that it's the right one, because applicants seem to be kind of wandering around. So this one was using the standard notice that says, please come to the hearing, right?
Fix that, okay.
And,
sorry.
and other applicants know, and they make sort of make their own, that says, please write, please come. So we could use, there's another one that did it right here, we could use their model.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, the community board recommends approval. We do have DOI. I think we still need fire department unless it came this morning. I thought the application looks very complete. The sound attenuation shown on the drawings and photos taken during construction show measures actually being taken. I mean, you know, you would need a very elaborate set of photographs to prove that it's installed everywhere, but at least there's a photograph that says they really did install the insulation, at least someplace.
I just have a comment, I'm not sure if that requires changing, if everything is okay. The PCE floor area in the statement of facts and finding does correspond with the plan, however, it doesn't correspond with the zoning chart. That's a simple fix. And I would recommend if they can have a note with regards to the sign, saying the sign pursuant to underlying zoning regulation.
Sorry, repeat that?
Signage complying with the underlying zoning regulation. Signage
This
to
is a
comply. Yeah, so I don't know if you want to, because they're not proposing any sign. No exterior signage is being
Oh,
proposed.
so then what do we,
In case in future, if somebody does, so we have a note, do you want to?
I
it's
just
I'm
don't
leaving
want
it
to
up to-
add more work for them
Okay,
on a
that's
drawing
fine.
that, because they have to comply with zoning anyway.
Okay,
And this
that's
is
fine.
this is a heavy sign district. It's not like you only get 50 square feet.
That's true.
So, okay. It'd be different if we were asking them to change the egress, then you can throw a note
Okay,
on there.
that's fine.
This is a lot of, yeah, okay.
Item number 2, 2019-165BZ, 1375 East 26th Street, Brooklyn.
We have proof of service of initial application. I didn't find the notice of hearing.
Yeah, I didn't find it either.
You didn't? No, so I don't think we have notice. And I looked on the emails, I didn't find any. Community Board recommends approval with 3 abstentions. We have 5 letters in support and 1 in opposition. Opposition cites overbuilding and loss of light and air as a result of too many such approvals in the neighborhood. Approval in support, they never tell you why they're in support, or rarely. Anyway, this is a semi-attached house. Drawings have to show the entirety of the adjacent house in plan, elevation, section, and axonometric. There's an axo provided which conceals the adjacent house, so you need one from the other side. Demolition drawings are very unclear as to what is being retained, because they use colors, and the colors obscure the actual lines, so the line weights and the graphics have to be improved. The statement of facts argues that this project should be permitted to extend the upper floors to a 20-foot rear yard, even though the neighborhood doesn't have that as a standard, because the semi-attached house has to maintain the integrity of the attachment, including, and the applicant included one approved project that did just that. So that project didn't have any enlargements at the front and kept the roof height down and only enlarged at the back. So kind of in exchange for maintaining the front integrity, we allowed the rear to be deeper, right? This project doesn't do that. The front wall is being pulled forward by 10 feet, so the only thing that isn't affected is the height. You can't have it both ways, right? The proposal gobbles up the existing house. They need to provide if they want to propose the front, then they need to provide a rendering showing the effect of modifying the front wall of the house on the neighborhood of similar semi-attached houses, because there's actually like 5 of these little double houses all in a row. So either pull the front wall back or pull the rear wall back. You can't have both. No information was given about the heights of the rear walls that are claimed to sit in 25-foot rear yard behind the site, because otherwise the adjacent rear yards are complying, so you can't argue for such a shallow rear yard. Okay. Any other comments? No?
Item number 3, 2019-188BZ, 1212 East Gun Hill Road, the Bronx.
Okay, so legalization of an existing 24-hour drive-through. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board takes no position. I'd like to know how long the drive-through has been operating. I think somewhere there was a mention that it's been years and years, but I don't know. You know?
I've used this McDonald's.
For years and years?
For
Okay.
years and years, yes.
Years and years.
Has it gone through?
Yes, as a drive-through.
Was it loud?
Okay. For the zoning lot to be treated as entirely in the C1-2 overlay, it must have existed as of December 1961 or the date of the zoning map amendment that turned it into that. So they need to provide proof that it actually is a pre-61 lot or subsequent amendment. Otherwise, that portion of the lot cannot be used for commercial purposes. Uh-oh. So anyway, maybe you've been going since 1961, but I don't know.
I'm not that old that I was since 1961, but I could tell you I was there in 1969.
Okay.
I don't remember if there was a drive-through, but I was there.
How could you remember that specific
It was
date?
actually, I guess it was the experience. I went with my mother's friend's husband and their son. And I just remember the experience, and it was across the street from the Gun Hill bowling lanes. And so
Wow.
it's just one of those clear memories you have.
Wow.
So you visited the site?
You could check that box. Okay, so Acris has nothing recorded against Lot 40, Block 4617. It used to be known as Lot 32. I'd like to know if there's an error. I don't understand how the tax lot number changed miraculously like that. It looks like the tax lot may have been subdivided into lots 32 and 28 in the mid-1960s. So that would be an if it was two separate zoning lots. I'm just curious, but since we have an expert on the subject, why does the drive-through have to be 24 hours?
That I can't speak to why. I think they're probably linking somewhat with the bowling alley across the street. I don't know if the bowling alley across the street has long hours, but that's what I'm thinking.
But so you go bowling, and then you really want to eat that hamburger in your car.
Yeah.
That's the thing you need to do.
You don't want to get out of your car at 3 in the morning if the
Yeah.
bowling alley is open. I don't know if the
Doesn't
bowling
bowling-
alley is open at 3 in the morning. I'm just, joking back and forth.
Doesn't bowling alleys, I mean, I don't go to bowling alleys very often, but don't they serve food there?
Yeah, but it's bad food.
Some
Yeah,
McDonald's.
like.
Oh, they're disgusting.
Deep fried hot dogs and.
Oh, yeah,
Black
because we're talking health food across the street. So I would like to say again, this is the trash container story. Please move the trash container away from the residential property. Provide significantly more planting between the residential property line and the drive-through parking area. Adjacent property owners should be notified of the next hearing, so I would like them to be specifically notified. Light spread diagram shows light spill onto adjacent properties, add shields, but let's verify that those were actually readings as opposed to estimates based on modeling. And then provide sound information for the menu boards relative to their projection onto adjoining residential properties. And acoustical, I think they said they would be providing an acoustical fence, but we need to see how that works. Other comments?
I had same set of comments with one addition, that is, should left turn be allowed onto Gun Hill Road from the site? And if not, then it should be prohibited and there should be a sign. Because Gun Hill Road is a busy road, and I think having a left turn would add more chaos to
I
it.
have tried, but it's almost impossible to make that left turn across traffic. You really have to go make a right turn, make another right turn, make
Which
a
is-
U-turn on the side street,
Oh.
come out at the stop sign.
Which is
go
what the
left.
applicant has
Yeah.
stated. Okay.
Okay. Others?
Seems like the bowling alley is open till 3 a.m. on Friday and Saturdays.
There you go.
But it doesn't have to be drive-through open 24/7. I mean, the drive-through can be till 12 o'clock, and the rest of the operation can be open 24/7.
Well, but this is the point. You finish bowling, you're exhausted, maybe you lost, and then, so all you want to do is really eat something. So you get in your car and you start to drive. You don't want to get out of your car because the person who gets in a car doesn't want to get out of a car. I think that's the theory.
That's correct.
I want to make a note, we have a letter of no objection from FDNY.
Oh, okay.
Oh, and what is it? Oh, never mind. Oh, EAS, still waiting.
We're still waiting on a
Still waiting
comment,
response on
please.
EAS.
Yeah.
What are we waiting on?
We have EAS comments, please.
From
From
DEP?
No, from us. We, Tracy, sent them EAS comments. We still waiting for them to reply to.
Very quickly, I'm looking, I looked at the picture, and this is regarding the trash enclosure. I know that they need to move it, but looking at the picture they submitted and looking at even Google image, I saw two things. I saw some cracking in the wall, and Google image kind of indicating that the little foundation for the wall for the trash enclosure could be undermined. So if they want to have somebody take a look at it, but we just raised the issue.
Okay. So I think, the question about how long they're open at night, that's really a question for the neighbors. That's why I really like the neighbors to be notified. If it's a nuisance for them, then there's no reason why it needs to be 24 hours open. I don't really get it anyway, but I don't know, whatever. Okay.
Item number 4, 2019-271, BZ, 37 Manson Avenue, Staten Island.
Mansion.
Mansion.
We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board recommends approval. We have one letter in opposition concerned with the health impacts. As discussed at last week's hearing, it is BSA's position that the height of the proposed structure must comply with bulk regulations. Applicant has to show that the cupola fits within the zoning envelope and that any increase in floor area that may result, since it's not exempt from floor area, complies with the maximum FAR. If the cupola or radio tower are permitted obstructions with respect to height and setback regulations, so state. I didn't look to see whether they are. Some spires, for example, are exempt. At the moment, the drawings state that the height of the cupola exceeds the maximum allowable 35 feet. If so, the BSA does not have the authority to waive bulk regulations here. Mr. Livian's conclusion in his memo, whenever that was, I don't have the date of the memo, that non-accessory radio towers are not subject to bulk regulations because no use group is assigned, would mean also that none of our PCEs would have to comply with bulk regulations, and of course they do. I don't really know how you assume that the use doesn't have a bulk regulation.
I want to correct I looked at all the height requirements and other things. So per section 33-43, which is a
Wait, slow down. Okay, sorry.
Section 33-43, which is the maximum height of walls and required setback applicable to all the C zones.
Yeah.
It says that if the front wall or portion of a building or other structure, in this case structure is located at the street line or within the initial setback distance set forth in this section, the height and setback of such front wall or other portion or other structure shall not exceed the maximum height above the curb level. That's just the front wall. Above such specified maximum height beyond the initial setback distance or other structure shall not penetrate the sky exposure plane. So there's the sky exposure plane, and the lot is pretty big, so they need to show the sky exposure plane, not the, I don't think the 35-foot height limit is applicable in this case.
So, can exceed, okay. So they have, with the other application we had last week, they have to show the zoning envelope, right?
yeah.
And show that it can exceed.
Yeah, and I looked at alternates front setback, which is section 3344, which also says other structure shall penetrate the alternate sky exposure plane.
Other structures shall?
Yeah, this is when it says building, no other structure shall penetrate the alternate sky exposure plane. So it's consistent, so the sky exposure plane applies in this case.
Yes,
That's I just
we
wanted
have
to-
other places where the zoning resolution is clear that a use waiver is not a bulk waiver. A use waiver is a use waiver. to go on with comments, the renderings do not show the GPS antennae that are described in the statement of facts as being mounted to the exterior of the cupola. The drawings should be revised to depict these because we're being sort of led to believe that the aesthetics of this is this little cupola, and you won't be able to tell that there's actually a tower, there's actually antennae, but it sounds actually like it's becomes a support for this array, which is a different thing. Drawings indicate the cupola is to be, quote, designed by others. We need to see the design. We are reviewing the aesthetics of the proposal and its ability to conceal the equipment in reasonable fashion. I don't know if this is the same applicant, but a while back we had, it's not, a while back we had a one-story building in a little commercial strip, I think in Queens, where the proposal was to add this gigantic thing that they called like a clock tower, and it was being made out of Swiss cheese, basically, looked terrible and was not, we've decided that from an aesthetic point of view, it would really have a negative impact on the neighborhood. So they have to show that this will not be like that one and will be aesthetically pleasing. They need to demonstrate that the combination of the proposed units, the units in the monopole, and the units within the enclosed fencing area combined comply with FCC regulations for concentrations of equipment within a given area, like we experienced on one rooftop in Queens, right? Where all these different antennae combined created a very, very hot roof that exceeded FCC regulation. There is something that's described as a WHIP, W-H-I-P antennae, shown on drawings Z06. I'd like to know what that is. Others?
I really like the design of the cupola because it kind of is, it's well thought out in the way it is integrated into this Cape Cod looking building. So it definitely seems to capture the essence of the building's architecture and carry it forward. So I would like to know the material that is being proposed and how, if they can do a little bit more of a rendering perspective to give us an idea of how that would look. When I was looking at it and I was talking to our executive director, it looked like a belfry. And, it's a permitted obstruction, so it's kind of just a thought.
A belfry has a bell.
Well,
It's on a church.
I know. I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
Just as a
Sanctuary.
footnote, nothing more than that.
So the federal government recommends co-location
Yeah.
whenever possible, so I just wanted to know why they could not locate within the existing monopole.
And I think the FCC report did do a cumulative effect of the existing and the proposed antenna on this site and identified that the combined would be far less than the general, than the radio frequency of the combined antenna is 30% of the FCC general population.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'd like them to walk us through
Okay.
it. Anybody else?
I like the design. Yeah, I like the way it looks. That's all.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I just maybe, again, I don't know if it was established, does the antenna and the supporting equipment minus the cupola fall within the parameters of the TPPN? This is to the question about obstruction.
Fall within the parameters of the TPPN.
Yeah, is it less than the 5% or the 400 square feet?
Well, otherwise they wouldn't have to come here, so.
I was just more curious as if it's the cupola that's triggering the height, and if it's part of this.
Triggering the,
The 5% rule of the TPPN.
no, but you're saying triggering the,
The bulk.
They need to come here.
yeah, so they came here because DOB determined that it was more than it was exceeding the TPPN, otherwise for sure they wouldn't be here, right?
I think the question that he was asking is if it was just the antenna.
I'm just asking because it was raised about whether it's a permitted obstruction or it's triggering a height waiver, for example. And my question, I'm sorry if I don't know the answer, I'm just asking the question.
No, it's not triggering a height. So DOB didn't opine on whether there's a height waiver, right? And when the notice of comments went out asking, does this comply with height, with bulk regulations, the answer was, we don't need to, because the Livian letter or memo or whatever says that these things are not subject to bulk regulations.
Right, and the reason I raised the question is that if the antenna and the supporting equipment falls within the parameters of the TPPN, then it's a permitted obstruction, potentially. I think that's what the Livian memo was suggesting, is that it doesn't trigger bulk requirements if it's within the parameters of a TPPN. It's once you exceed that you trigger the bulk requirements.
That's not what the applicant is claiming the letter stands for.
Okay,
But anyway,
just throwing it out there.
I don't know, so without looking at all of those things again, I haven't memorized either the TPPN or the Livian letters. Okay.
Okay, this concludes the public review session for February 3rd, 2020.